The title of my chosen short story is The Selfish Giant, written by Oscar Wilde and pulled from The Happy Prince and Other Tales. I chose the story because it had a deep meaning that kept me going until the end. I won't spoil it now, but it will leave you with a lot of emotions throughout the entire thing. Every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass, and there were 12 peach trees that sprang out in springtime, broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in autumn bore rich fruit. "How happy we are here!" they cried to each other. But one day the giant came back. He had been visit to his friend the Cornish ogre, and had stayed with them for 7 years. And when he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant. "Anyone can understand that, and I will not allow anyone to play in it but myself." So he built a high wall all around it and put up a notice board, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." He was a very selfish giant. The poor children had now nowhere to play, and they used to wander around the high wall when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. "How happy we were there," they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant was it still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. "Spring has forgotten this garden," they cried, "so we will live here all year round." The snow covered up the grass with their great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver. They invited the north wind as well to stay with them, and he came. He roared all day about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. "This is a delightful spot," he said. "We must ask the hail to come here and visit." So the hail came, and every day for 3 hours he rattled on the roof of the castle. "I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming," said the selfish giant. "I hope there will be change in weather soon." But the spring never came, nor summer. The autumn gave gold to the fruit of every garden, but the giant's garden she gave none. "He is too selfish," she said, for so it was always winter there. One morning, the giant was lying awake in bed, and when he heard some lovely music. It was really only a linnet singing outside his window, but it was so long since he heard a bird sing in his garden that it all seemed like the most beautiful music in the world. The hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. "I believe that spring has finally come at last," said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. What did he see? He saw a most wonderful sight through a little hole in the wall. The children had crept in, and they were all sitting in branches of the trees. In every tree he could see there was a little child, and then the trees were so glad that the children came back they had covered themselves in blossoms, and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner was it still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all around, crying bitterly. "Come up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could. But the boy was simply too tiny, and the giant's heart melted as he looked out. "How selfish I have been," he said. "Now I know why the spring was not to come here. I will put that little boy on top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever." So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly, and went out to the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run. So the giant stole up from behind and took him gently in his hand and put him up into the tree. And instantly the tree broke at once into blossoms, and the birds came and sang on it. And the little boy stretched his 2 arms around the giant's neck and kissed him. And the other children, when they saw the giant was no longer wicked, came running back, and with them came spring. "It's your garden now, little children," said the giant. and he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to the market, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. "But where is your little companion?" he said. "The boy I put into the tree." The giant loved him the most because he had kissed him. "We do not know," answered the child. "He has gone away." "You must tell him to be sure to come here tomorrow," said the giant. But the children, they said that they did not know where he lived, and he had never seen him before, and the giant felt very sad. Every afternoon when school was over, the children came and played with the giant, but the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. He longed for his first little friend and often spoke to him. "How I would like to see him again," he used to say. Years went over, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play around anymore, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children play at their games and admired his garden. "I have many beautiful flowers," he said, but the children were the most beautiful flowers of all. One winter morning, he looked out of his window. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely spring asleep and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder. It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered in lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs the giant ran in great joy out to the garden. He hastened across the grass and came near to the child. But when he had come close, his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared wound thee?" For on the palms of the child's hands were 2 prints of nails, and same thing in his little feet. "Who hath dared wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me, that I may take my big sword and slay him." "Nay," answered the child, "but these are wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to mine, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead in the tree, all covered with white blossoms.